Hi, I'm Mark Zipp at Crocker Farm Auction. I'm here to discuss an important example of Southern pottery that we'll be selling in our October 28th auction. This flask was made in Salem, North Carolina during the first few decades of the 19th century. And it's the first of this form we've ever offered. This is one of the iconic molded figural flasks that were made in Salem during the late 18th and early 19th century, along with the fish and the bears and the squirrels and several other forms that have really become synonymous with the Moravian pottery tradition. This lady bottle is one of several sizes produced, and you can see it's painstakingly decorated with this beautiful Wealden type glaze, modeled after English wares. A lot of people refer to this as a tortoiseshell glaze. Thomas Wealden developed it during the 18th century in England, and while you don't really see many American potters attempting to copy that, they produced exceptionally fine ware in the Moravian tradition in North Carolina. And they really were attempting to make a refined, stately object that could be used in the home during that time period. And what you're left with is some kind of amalgamation of the finer English ceramics and sort of rural country folk art, which is a really pleasing medium that they've created. So this is made out of iron-rich clay, essentially what they would call earthenware or redware clay, that's orange. It fires orange, and we of course have all seen redware from throughout the country that has that typical orange clay body. But this is actually dunked in a whitish slip, the entire piece, and you can see is a little spot right here on the reverse. Luke, can you get that? Where a little bit of that orange is peeking through. We also see it on the bottom, that natural orange clay. But once this was dunked, it was then very nicely decorated with a sponge. And you can see that it almost appears like they're attempting to produce the waviness of a skirt. We can see these molded wrinkles in the dress itself. But they've actually had this neat, produced this really neat undulating manganese sponging in brown throughout the dress. And then there's also copper highlights running in a more diagonal pattern across the body. You can see she's holding some flowers at her chest that are molded into the flask itself. And so she's your typical Southern belle, I guess. One thing we thought was really interesting about this bottle, and there's not many of these out there, other examples of this bottle that we've seen come to auction or illustrated in different books, they have a whitish or cream colored head and bust. So while the remainder of the bottle will be glazed in some other color, possibly green, they'll keep her head and chest kind of like a flesh tone to fit with what a human would naturally look like. In this case, however, it's dunked in green, which is actually very striking, very interesting. And this was the only example that I could find in my research that was glazed in this manner. And I find it very interesting. But while Luke and I were actually down at Mesa this past weekend, there's actually a larger example in the Mesa collection that is glazed in a similar manner with green on its head. And that is on display at the William C. and Susan S. Mariner Southern Ceramics Gallery at the Museum of Early Southern Decorative Arts in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and you ought to check it out if you have the chance, if you have the ability to get down there or up there or eastward to that museum. You really should check it out. They have some outstanding examples, particularly for Southern pieces in general. If you're interested in figural bottles from the Moravian tradition, they have a number of those on display. This is an exciting example that recently surfaced down south. One last little feature about it that I found interesting. At some point, somebody colored the eyes blue and the lips red. And it appears to have some age to it, so possibly this was used as some girl's baby doll or something along those lines at some point in its history. But it really survives in remarkable condition, despite the fact that it was made roughly 200 years ago. And we're very excited to offer an October 28th auction.